Hi everyone. Today we did get a structural break here of the SPY charts. You can see the high, slightly higher high here, consolidation range, and then we got the low retest of the 55 and a big breakdown off of that structure. So this is broken here now. We are now back below that 585.91 level. Broke below all the EMAs. You still got that 200 hanging out at 578.87. Watching this zone here, momentum still very bearish. RSI super oversold, but let's take a quick look at all of the charts and see if we can find some levels for tomorrow. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we got the Trump tax bill facing some hurdles. Supposedly this is supposed to be good for markets, and then as it was getting passed, markets didn't like it so much, and now we have some hurdles and markets still don't like that so much. So maybe it's just markets want any excuse to go down at this point, but that is what we're seeing right now. We are seeing hurdles, and they are going to the White House to try to address this. Of course, Trump saying it is a big, beautiful bill, and it did pass the Senate. It's going to the House, and the House Freedom Caucus is saying there's no way that this passes at the current moment. The centerpiece for this, of course, is no tax on tips, which people are concerned could raise the deficit. Of course, nobody cared about that last administration, but now it's a problem. We do have a ton of debt coming due next year and the year after, so maybe that's a problem. And we're starting to see yields go a little bit higher as we kind of aggregate the global economy against ourselves, but we'll see. Right now, there's a little bit of uncertainty around this, and markets do not like uncertainty. Out of all the things, that's one of the things that markets don't like probably the most, and that's what we have, at least for now. Moving over to Fear and Greed Index, nice step down there to a 66 from a 69.70 on it a week ago, so a pretty substantial step down. We're seeing a nice little sell here. Bigger move down towards that 125. If we get below 125, I think this structure is going to be even more broken, and we're going to see this head to a slightly lower low from that previous low, which I'm fully aware that is a long way from now, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Still greed on strength. Breadth starting to roll over here. We'll take a look at that later. Put call ratio also starting to elevate. Volatility starting to elevate. We said this was a base in here. That is starting to come true a little bit more. And then safe haven demand, still extreme greed on junk bonds. So a lot of complacency over the last week, and I think markets are just done with this rally regardless of what's going on in the news. Moving over to the economic calendar, basically nothing here for today. We did see the 20-year bond auction come in super hot at a 5.104, way higher than the previous read. So we got yields going higher. That's definitely concerning. We have a little bit of soft data tomorrow. Existing home sales. We also have 20-year tips. That comes in a little bit hot. That might be interesting. And then for the Friday, basically nothing here except for that new home sales. Not expecting a whole lot out of that. Moving over to the charts, of course, this looks terrible. You can see down 1.69% here today. Let's go ahead and extend out this trend line, marking those lows. If we stay inside of this structure, that would give us some support around this kind of 562, 563 area over the next day or two. You also have this major support in here, the 200 at 572.57, major trend line in there as well, 572 momentum. Continues to roll the bearish, starting to get a little bit more aggressive, breaking below the SMA. Back below that 9 EMA as well. Everything says this is going to go lower. Looks quite bearish here on the structure, especially relative to what we had been seeing. You can see nice, consistent higher highs. We had that hesitation day yesterday, and then you can see absolutely a bearish setup, breakdown, retest, breakdown, big acceleration off of that level, broke this level here, headed towards 578.87 in the 200, at least in my opinion. Maybe we get a little bit of a retracement early in the session, but I would expect a lower high, probably not too much higher than this low here, around 586, my level 585.91. And then I would expect a continuation down to this level tomorrow. So we'll see. Obviously a little extended in the short term, but definitely bearish. Moving over to the SPY charts here, you can see obviously we flipped to bearish conditions. We hit it on the breakdown early in the morning, retest breakdown here, back below all the EMAs, back at that lowest ATR band. This is why I was saying we might see just a little bit of a retracement, but I wouldn't expect that to hold up at this point. Expecting a bearish continuation. Your trailing stop right now, 589.83 to the upside, and then you got this kind of consolidation of EMAs in this zone here. Big volume on the sells, everything you would want to see if you were trading this to the bear side, and then you can see it here. Even on the 4-hour chart, we did see a change of conditions. So you got bearish conditions here now, trailing stop all the way up at 598.05. Expect this to go at least to that next level at 578.30, and then your next one all the way down 571. Are we going to get there tomorrow? Probably not. You still got this gap in here. Probably going to get a little bit of a move down, big volume on the sell, everything you would not want to see if you're trading this to the bull side. Moving over to the NASDAQ charts here, same thesis. You can see outside reversal day did go up and touch that level at 523, arguably a few cents off of it, 523.24, but we'll call it a touch. We hit the highs at least, and then we got to sell from there. We're right down to that 9 EMA, 514 is the level. We're below it, 513. 92 is the current price. My level, 509. 74 is your support. Momentum continues to step down. RSI breaking back below the SMA for the first time in a while. So big bearishness there. And then you can see it here on the hourly chart. Not as terrible as the SPY charts. Went up to the zone, retested it, immediately broke down. The SPY chart looked a little cleaner on the touch here. Hit this zone, sold off to the next one on the SPY chart, but we overthrew it pretty substantially and then sold. Of course, you still had huge volume on the selling action there. And like I said, 509.74, got the 200 there at 505, and then the next level, 598.96. Moving over to the Tasty charts here for the Qs, you can see we are still in this range. We're still technically bullish. 509 is that level, 509.02. We talked about it on the previous chart. Same level in here on that trailing stop. But looking at the hourly chart, we did flip to bearish here. You did find a little bit of support at the 144, 511.18. Didn't quite get to that lowest ATR band at the end of the session. You can see we did get a touch here. Didn't fade back to it like the SPY charts. So the SPY actually looks a little bit weaker than the NASDAQ does right now, but in terms of volume, in terms of momentum, this still looks bearish. And right now, 520.41 is your trailing stop on the hourly chart. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, same thesis across the board. Big sells, big gap down, big fall. Down 2.8% on the Russell, big sell. Momentum fading, RSI fading. Next level 201.88, clean through the 205 and the trend line here, 21 EMA there as well. At 288 cents, waiting to see what happens. Volume starting to spike up on the sell. So clear change in structure with that lower low. And then looking at the Dow, same thesis, down about 2% right to the level. 418.38 is the level. After hours, we're a little bit below it. The next zone of support is in here around this 413 to 414 area. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish, big volume on the sell. So again, across all of the major indices, they all look a little bit bearish, but the NASDAQ did hold up okay. Moving over to the Mag 7, the Mag 7 sold as well, down about 1% after hours, continues to sell a little bit, down about 75 cents, but back below the 305.25 level on a closing basis. Tested the low from Monday, didn't quite close below it, but I suspect that we will continue to drift through there. RSI below the SMA, momentum fading. So everything says this should go to that next level, 296.74 is that level. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple continues to sell, does not look good, down 2.3%, underperforming markets, and 199.54 is the next level. We have this zone in here, expecting to get at least to that area. The low of that zone is 193, expecting to get into there at least. And then you got Microsoft down 1.22%, momentum fading, RSI breaking down, back below that 453.30 level, so we're starting to see the early breakdowns. Do we see a big wick down, a retracement, continuation lower? That's what I would be looking for. Just because this has such a bullish structure, I would expect some buyers to come in here at least early in this dip down. Apple, maybe not so much, but Microsoft, I would expect. We get a big dip, some buyers come in, ride the short move, and then get that continuation lower. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA, as we suspected, these did reverse to the downside here. Tesla breaking back below 336, continues to sell after hours, down about $3. Bigger mover after hours. Momentum fading, RSI right at the SMA. If it's going to bounce, it needs to do it now, but structurally everything looks bad, and this is absolutely not what you want to see here on NVIDIA either. You can see big wick, took out all of these highs, immediately reversed, closed really close to the lows below the structure of this consolidation. The level is 130.35. Are we going to go back down into this kind of 124 to 116 area? I think this is probably where we're going, at least in the short term. Everything says this should go lower. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, we got that everything sell coming on, both of these selling off 1.16 and 203 respectively. Momentum, RSI, everything looks weaker now. You can see huge move down on discretionaries, closed well below the body of everything here. 210 is your support, next level all the way down at 203 and the 200 in this kind of zone. Potentially as high as 206.64 you find a little bit of support, but I would expect to go a little bit lower here. And then staples, same thesis, broke 81.85 after trying to break out yesterday, touching these highs yesterday, and then gap down and fell here today. So structurally, everything looks a lot weaker and more like a topping pattern, especially after today's movement. Moving over to real estate and gold, both of these seeing some pretty big down moves, 2.65% on real estate. We've been in a very expensive area. We've said for a long time, anything above kind of 41, 42 is not a good place to be. My level 40.07. So if this dips back below 40, that's much more of an opportunity. Anytime we get in there, we tend to go higher from there, so trying to lock in those better yields. Still got a little bit of patience, looking for this to sell some more over the next day or two. You can see momentum and RSI, of course, both bearish, but just keep an eye on it as we go lower, especially if we get into the 37 area. Again, that is going to be a big buy opportunity. And then same here on gold. Big move up, safe haven, momentum bullish, RSI bullish, probably headed back to the trend line up here around 313.30. Moving over to breadth, this is absolutely what we were worried about on both of these. We said this was a topping pattern. It only lasts for so long, and now you got the breakdown here. So big momentum sell, big RSI sell, expecting this to go lower. How much lower? Who knows? 36 to 28 is probably the range. I would wait until we at least get to here before we start to try to buy some of this. But for now, big breakdown, expecting a lower low to come. Similarly here on 50-day, big sell, momentum bearish, RSI bearish, coming off of the topping pattern. Obviously, you have a lot more zones of support on the 50-day, and structurally, this is still quite bullish versus this 20-day, which is clearly a topping pattern, but we'll see. Either way, I would expect both of these to go down over the next 2 to 3 weeks, potentially. Moving over to the dollar continued its sell-off. We said this structure was broken here yesterday. We closed below 99.83 today. Do have a little bit of a base and a little bit of a retracement happening here, but either way, this is clearly fading. Looks like a clean bear flag, and you would expect this to break down quite a bit. My next level is 96.85. Then you got trend below it around this 96.50 area. Moving over to bonds, as you would suspect, these craters here today, we saw yields went a lot higher and these went lower. So down 0.67, and then we got TLT moving down 1.7%. We said this structure was bearish, but this is more aggressive than I thought. I did take a nibble here at the end of today's session. We'll see if this ends up holding in here. 82.60 is the next support. That'll be interesting, but momentum bearish, RSI bearish. And I just want to flash over to the yields here. You can see 10-year big break above that 4.55 level. 2-year not so much, but 10-year big breakout, and that is what's spooking markets. And that's why this is cratering so much here today. So we'll see how this comes in over the next couple days. Either way, buying opportunity anywhere around this 82.60 area. Moving over to my accounts, of course, I went down with the ship a little bit, down around $900. The Russell position obviously got squeezed. I took it off and managed to avoid some of the losses, but the Russell did look quite bad. And then the Qs, same thing here. Sold the shares, sitting on these calls still. I think we're going to go lower, so I want to stay short the calls, potentially get back into the green on those. So I took the profits on the shares, so that was good. Could have taken more profits. I hesitated a little bit, but that's okay. Still looking for this to go lower. Interesting to see us basically unchanged now after hours, but either way, everything looks bearish across the board, and that is what I'm trading as we go into tomorrow's session. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of the current bill going through the House. Is it going to get passed? Is it good for the economy? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.